Hello there guys, Daniel Childs back here again. Hope you're doing really well on this Friday. No game for Chelsea this weekend. Obviously, it's the international break, so no team selector, no rational perspective. Instead, we're going to be talking about Enzo Fernandez, the Enzo Fernandez problem, as I've labelled it, because I do think he is a relevant player to speak about during the international break. The concerns over his level of performance, his suitability to Enzo Maresca, how he's been performing, obviously being given the captain's armband, and a lot of the controversy or kind of diverse opinions around Fernandez as well. So we're going to delve into that in today's show. If you are new around here, please hit that like button, please hit that subscribe button, posting regular content about Chelsea Football Club. And exciting, I know I teased it a few months ago, it's taken longer than expected, but finally, in the next few weeks, you will be seeing the brand new Son of Chelsea studio. 3.0, 4.0, kind of lost track at this point, but it will be a brand new studio, and I'm very excited to launch it with some good content as well. So stay tuned for that. If you are listening on the podcast, come over to the YouTube show because you'll be able to see it there as well. But let's jump into it with Enzo Fernandez. It was quite funny, really, because I posted a piece earlier this week about Enzo Fernandez and specifically about this issue on my Substack. If you haven't gone and subscribed to it, go and do so. Free to support, free to sign up, and you'll get the latest pieces into your inbox whenever I post them. Some of the pieces we turn into videos, or I take from a video and kind of expand in more detail. Other pieces are kind of on their own. Trying to post at least one piece about Chelsea per week, and we may also delve into some kind of wider football issues in the future as well. But I posted it, and I thought it was a relevant talking point, especially during an international break. And then I was sent a piece by one of my mates that Liam Toomey had posted on literally the same day. I had no idea he'd posted it. I'm almost certain he had no idea. I'd published a piece about Enzo Fernandez, and of course more people are going to be reading Liam's piece for The Athletic, and it just kind of said to me, showed to me this is a big talking point at the moment, and I don't think that's a massive shock, because Enzo Fernandez, and I make this point in the piece, but I think it's a relevant point to start, because Enzo Fernandez is not just some squad player for Chelsea. It's not. I've talked about Kenan Dewsbury-Hall in recent weeks and why I just don't think the signing makes a ton of sense. But with Dewsbury-Hall, does it really matter that much? I mean, this is a guy who I suspect will effectively be a squad player. If he becomes more than a squad player, it means he's been a real success. But him remaining on the bench for a lot of weeks and mainly playing cup and, less important European games and even the rare Premier League game, it's not going to create that many headlines, to be honest. With all respect to Kenan Dewsbury-Hall, Enzo Fernandez is a very different story. Obviously, the second most expensive Chelsea signing of all time. This is someone who came in with massive fanfare from Benfica in that January 23 window. The way he's been marketed by the club is intense. And of course, he's now been given the captain's armband after, of course, what happened during the summer. Not because of it, but, the fact that what happened during the summer with the Argentina team bus, and obviously him singing that racist chant. And we still, it's hard to know whether FIFA are going to take any more action. We haven't heard anything since, but obviously that set the tone for what I already felt was a big season for Enzo Fernandez. Because if we just talk about his performances on the pitch, I don't think you can seriously argue Enzo Fernandez has lived up to expectation. You can give some grace for him arriving during the course of a very bad season in his first few months at Chelsea. I think a lot of players get grace for that. And also, I guess a lot of people would give grace to the fact that for last season, it appeared that he was suffering and dealing with an injury that he had to be dealing with towards the end of the season. But of course, it became a narrative, and not just a narrative, but something we saw with our own eyes. It felt towards the end of last season, Chelsea actually looked a better football team when Enzo Fernandez wasn't present. Suddenly, Caicedo looked like a better player. Luckily, so far this season, even when both have been on the pitch, they've actually, and Caicedo has still been able to reach that level. But unfortunately, I don't think Fernandez has been able to reach the levels people believe he can and believe he kind of will. I think that's also something I regularly come back to when I talk about and analyse players at Chelsea. And maybe you think this is fair or unfair, but I don't think it's unfair to expect a player of Enzo Fernandez's price and what is kind of promoted as and sold as, for me to expect him to be a very big player for Chelsea. He has never been as transformative as Cole Palmer. I know that's very difficult, but again, we're talking about someone who was signed for a lot of money. He has not, reached the same quick development that Caicedo has, where Caicedo's position in the Chelsea team is now solidified. I don't even think, in terms of context, you can say he's had a better Chelsea career so far than Nicholas Jackson. I think Jackson's ascent as a player has been more impressive and steeper. I think Enzo actually, some of Enzo's best performances actually weirdly came in that first period for Chelsea. I remember games against Leicester, against Everton, where he put in some brilliant passes and put in some brilliant performances where it got people off their seats. Have the setbacks, the injuries restrained Enzo? Is Enzo now playing more restricted for Enzo Maresca? That means he's not doing those adventurous things. There are two sides to this. So let's look at Liam Toomey's piece where he delved into some of the numbers, and these are the Enzo Fernandez touches from last season. And if you're listening on the podcast, it kind of summarizes that more general across the pitch, mostly 9% of his touches in the Premier League in 23-24 were effectively just behind the halfway line, pretty central midfield, where I think a lot of people would expect Enzo Fernandez to be getting the ball. What's interesting this season, it has slightly gone up in different areas, especially on the left side of Chelsea's midfield. You see this a lot. If you watch Chelsea, Enzo consistently picks up this kind of left-sided, at times almost left back if you've got Cucurella kind of inverting and moving forward. 8%, 7%, 11% actually on the left side just over the halfway line moving into the opposition half. And he's picking up that area a lot. And that is something that is, leading to, as Liam Toomey points out, Fernandez touching the ball a lot less overall. He explains he is averaging 66.3 touches per 90 in the Premier League this season, according to FBref, which is down from 86.9 touches per 90 in 23-24. That is a big drop, which is due to him being far less involved in Chelsea's possession build-up in the defensive and middle thirds. His attacking third touches per 90 minutes are virtually identical this season and last, and his 5.4 progressive passes per 90 are way down from his average of 8.6 per 90 last season, as are his passes into the final third per 90, 6 down from 7.2, and his passes into the penalty area, 0.5 down from 1.8. Now, I think on top of that, it's kind of a conflict, right? Because you can go, as we did with Enzo at times last season, very early on with Pochettino, a big discourse around him was he's playing far too high for Mauricio Pochettino. Why is Pochettino playing him basically as a number 10? At the very start of this season, Maresca did the same thing against Man City and it didn't work at all because Fernandez is not a good presser off the ball and he was rarely able to get into good positions where from a deep position he's playing a pass that's going to unlock a defence. So it was kind of the worst of both worlds, really. He was unable to impact what was a big game at the start of the season. But I think a general concern we had about Maresca was this style of football, this positional play, possession style of football would limit players. The fact is, that hasn't been the case. I mean, Fernandez in kind of a progressive attacking discussion is a bit of an outlier. Palmer has continued to flourish. Madueke has continued his improvement. Jackson's been scoring goals. Sancho's looked like a creative threat since coming in. It's not like Chelsea's overall attack and creativity is dead. Actually, Chelsea are one of the most effective teams in the Premier League currently in the final third. We're scoring some of the highest goals in the Premier League. So our attack is not faltering because Enzo is having less touches. Enzo Fernandez, that is. And I think that's something you have to factor in. It's easy to blame Maresca. It's easy to kind of go, he's playing in a bad position. That's why his performances are down. But that isn't affecting other players who maybe in some ways have had to adjust to Maresca's style of play, which I do think has been pretty good so far. And there is just a harsh reality. With Fernandez's minutes so far, he has 0 goals or assists from 514 minutes, which is not impressive. His pass accuracy overall is lower than Caicedo's. He's averaging 0.13 expected assists per 90, which is only slightly better than Caicedo, who naturally, of course, sits a little bit deeper. In terms of off the ball, he's only winning 42% of tackles, 46% of duels, 0.35 of interceptions too, which means it's not like we're waiting for that execution to be just slightly better. Off the ball, this is a problem with Enzo Fernandez as well, is that he's quite limited. Off the ball, he's not a great tackler. He doesn't have a lot of speed. And at the age of 23, it's hard to envisage that is going to get much better. So it kind of feels like, in a way, we're having a similar conversation with Enzo Fernandez as we were having with Jorginho, which is not where Enzo Fernandez needs to be. We know Jorginho had a brilliant run in his Chelsea career, but in terms of, I think, what Enzo Fernandez is marketed as, he's not supposed to be a regista, and he's not really supposed to be a player that becomes a limitation and a weakness for Chelsea. I think I saw that a lot during the Forest game, where there were moments in the first half, and I'll put the screenshots up now, where against a very tight and well-structured Forest side, there were a few times where Chelsea had an ability to get the ball out of their feet and play it into space. And during the first half, Enzo Fernandez, from a set piece, I think it was, is able to launch effectively a counter-attack, and his pass is short for Cole Palmer. Murillo really does well to intercept and then takes a shot at goal. Those are those moments where Enzo Fernandez is supposed to be one of Chelsea's best players. And when he's failing to execute those passes, it becomes really frustrating. And also, as the game went on, there were loose touches, loose balls that directly led to counter-attacking opportunities. So that becomes a problem. If you are not directly contributing in a creative sense, but then you are limited off the ball, it becomes a real serious question. What is your purpose in the team? And I feel that that is something that for Fernandez and for Maresca is a very awkward conversation, because Fernandez has been given the captain's armband. He sells I think he's one of the highest sellers of shirts at Chelsea currently. He's marketed as a massive player. So if Fernandez is suddenly dropped, even though from a performance level, I don't think that would be the worst outcome, because I'd like to see Lavia and Caicedo, how that too could work in central midfield. Obviously for Fernandez and for headlines, that becomes a talking point. And what happens with Fernandez for the long term? How does he fit into this team? Because Fernandez needs to be undeniably one of the best players in this Chelsea team. The way people talk about him with his talent, they market him as one of Chelsea's greatest players. Like, you know, he in terms of talent, like he has to be up there with Palmer. And no one can seriously argue that he is producing that level of performance. From what I've seen so far this season, there have been, sure, nice passes that you can pick out that have led to some nice attacking moves for Chelsea. But overall, I think his passing has been really sloppy. I think he's given away the ball cheaply. I think at times his passing has broken down some encouraging moves. And off the ball, I think he has a limitation. So I think that that is something that overall creates a problem for Enzo Maresca in such a key area. So far this season, the results and performances have been good enough that, you know, it's not that big of an issue. And the hope is these things get ironed out. Liam Toomey also pointed out that, you know, Enzo Fernandez, even in that Forest game, taking up kind of the left-sided positions even quite further up, of being able to play these progressive passes. You know, I don't think any of these passes are world-class. They're not exactly passes that I think no other player could play. It's not, you know, it's not exactly eye of the needle stuff. It's kind of just putting a player in a certain position and then them executing that pass in more of a structured way. Again, is that what Enzo Fernandez at his best is supposed to be, or could you get a more dynamic and more, you know, the question I would ask in that sense, if his role and if his execution is not that specialized, but then you can add someone who can do that passing, but then also offer you more off the ball, that would be the question I'd be asking, because, you know, that's the point of Fernandez. I think for me, if he's going to be in the team, he needs to be offering something that is high and above what his midfield peers can offer as well. So am I being too harsh? I know he has a lot of defenders, and there's a lot of people who believe that Chelsea don't play well when Fernandez isn't on the pitch. And to be honest, so far this season, you can make a valid case of that. You know, even though we won at Bournemouth, it wasn't that great a performance. A week later, we're beating West Ham convincingly. Obviously, he played some important passes in the game against Brighton. So I think Enzo, because of his position in the team, will keep playing. But I think if his performances continue to tail off and that productivity isn't there, Maresca may have to make a difficult decision. And then what happens after that is, of course, anyone's guess. So those are my thoughts on Enzo Fernandez. Let me know yours in the comments below. Do you agree, disagree? Follow me across the socials. Have a great weekend, and I will see you again very soon. All the best.